Marianne Parker had never imagined her life unraveling like a frayed thread caught on the jagged edge of a rusted fence. But here she was, staring at the empty kitchen with its peeling wallpaper and a sink full of dirty dishes that seemed to echo her sense of failure. At 48, she had believed she had a stable life, a husband she trusted, a comfortable home in suburban Ohio, and a steady job at a local insurance agency that paid the bills. But reality had struck with the subtle cruelty of a thief in the night. When the company announced massive layoffs, Marianne, with her 20 years of service, was among those let go. The shock was crippling, not just because of the immediate loss of income, but because it forced her to confront a harsh truth. She had been coasting, thinking her life was secure when it was nothing but an illusion. Bills began to pile up like menacing towers, each envelope a reminder of impending doom. The car loan, the mortgage, her daughter Emily's college tuition, all pressing down like a weight she had no strength to lift. And just when the world seemed at its bleakest, she discovered that her husband, Tom, had been cheating for years, his betrayal laying waste to the fragile trust she had clung to all these decades. The revelation came like a punch to the gut, leaving her physically nauseated and emotionally paralyzed. She would never forget the night she found the text messages on his phone, innocent-seeming words that carried the sting of deceit, dinner plans, secret trips, and hidden hotel bookings. Marianne felt a part of herself die, and in its place grew a raw, aching emptiness, as if the life she had built on love and loyalty was nothing but smoke. And yet, amid the despair, she held on to Emily, who had just turned 19 and was struggling with her own version of young adulthood, trying to balance college, part-time work, and the emotional turbulence of watching her mother crumble. Marianne's heart twisted with guilt and fear, imagining the conversations she would have to have, the ways she would try to shield Emily from the harshest truths while simultaneously preparing her for the realities they could no longer ignore. Her friends tried to help. Karen, her neighbor and lifelong confidant, brought casseroles and offered sympathetic ears, while Miguel, a former co-worker who had become a mentor of sorts, suggested strategies for debt consolidation and job hunting. But even their support sometimes felt like a thin bandage over a wound that refused to heal. Scams began to infiltrate her life, as if the universe delighted in her misery. Fraudulent credit repair companies, predatory payday loans, and con artists posing as financial advisors, each one offering a glimmer of hope that quickly turned into another layer of despair. Marianne's days blurred together, each one a grueling marathon of rejection, anxiety, and exhaustion, yet she somehow forced herself to keep moving. She found solace in small, ordinary moments, Emily laughing over coffee, the sunlight spilling through the curtains, the quiet hum of her old refrigerator, a reminder that life, despite its cruelty, was still happening. The nights were the hardest, when silence pressed down like a shroud and memories of her once happy marriage taunted her. But in those quiet moments, Marianne also discovered a sliver of resilience she hadn't known she possessed. She would call it survival, or stubbornness, or sheer desperation. Whatever it was, it kept her awake and moving, hunting for solutions, reaching for the faint light at the end of a tunnel that felt miles away. Slowly, she began to pick up the pieces, creating spreadsheets of debt, negotiating with lenders, and applying for jobs that left her heart racing with both hope and dread. Emily became her anchor, a reminder that even in the darkest hours, life demanded action, connection, and care. Despite the crushing weight of her losses, Marianne realized that she was still capable of love, of hope, and of a future she had never thought possible. Months passed, each one a mix of tiny victories and crushing setbacks. Marianne managed to secure a temporary job at a small accounting firm, a position that barely covered half of her expenses, but it gave her a sense of purpose and a semblance of routine. Every day, she battled the gnawing fear that she wouldn't be able to pay rent, that electricity would be shut off, that Emily's tuition money would vanish into the void of unpaid bills. And yet, there were moments of grace, like the Saturday mornings when she and Emily would walk to the nearby park, coffee in hand, laughing at stories from college and old family anecdotes, or the rare evenings when Karen would invite them over for home-cooked meals and conversations that temporarily erased the burden of debt and betrayal. Marianne's relationship with Tom was a minefield of anger, grief, and lingering attachment, complicated by shared responsibilities and the memories of a life once full of love. Legal consultations revealed layers of financial entanglement, from joint loans to shared investments, forcing Marianne to confront not only emotional betrayal but economic vulnerability. She discovered, to her horror, that Tom had siphoned money into secret accounts, leaving her with barely enough to sustain herself, and had even entertained a series of online scams that drained thousands from their savings. The realization was suffocating. Her life was built on a foundation of lies, her security a mirage she had been blind to for decades. Marianne found herself questioning every relationship, every choice, every dream she had ever held dear. Nights were sleepless, filled with a whirlpool of regret and anxiety, but she kept a journal, a daily ritual that allowed her to pour her raw emotions onto paper. Sometimes the tears came so hard she would curl on the floor, shaking, whispering apologies to herself and to Emily for a life suddenly full of instability. Yet, through all this turmoil, small sparks of hope emerged. Miguel continued to mentor her, helping her rebuild her credit and teaching her financial literacy in a way she had never learned in her youth. Karen introduced her to a local community support group for women facing financial hardship and relationship breakdowns, a network that offered empathy, practical advice, and shared experiences that made Marianne feel less isolated. Slowly, she began to recognize her own resilience, the fact that she could survive this maelstrom, that she could rebuild not just a home, but a life, on her terms. Emily, despite her own youthful insecurities, became a source of inspiration, her determination to succeed academically and emotionally a mirror to Marianne's own awakening. They celebrated small victories together, a bill paid in full, a rejection letter that led to a better opportunity, a neighbor returning a lost wallet. Marianne realized that life's beauty existed even amidst catastrophe, hidden in moments of kindness, laughter, and perseverance. And though heartbreak still lingered, the sting of betrayal dulled just enough for her to start dreaming again, not of a return to the old life, but of a new existence forged through pain, honesty, and unwavering courage. By the time winter settled over Ohio, Marianne had begun to feel a cautious sense of control over her chaotic life, though the cold only seemed to amplify her loneliness. The house felt emptier now that Tom had moved out, taking with him not only his presence but the echo of every lie he had told, leaving Marianne with a quiet that was both a relief and a haunting reminder of the past. The financial strain persisted. She had managed to consolidate some debts, but the interest rates on the remaining loans felt like shackles on her chest, reminding her daily that freedom came at a high cost. She became meticulous with every dollar, clipping coupons, tracking every expense, and turning to side gigs like freelance bookkeeping and online tutoring to make ends meet. But even with these efforts, she sometimes found herself staring at her bank balance late at night, heart pounding, panic rising as if the numbers themselves were accusing her of failure. Emily, sensing her mother's stress, became a quiet pillar, often staying up to help with spreadsheets, gently reminding Marianne to eat, or making small gestures like leaving hot chocolate on the counter. The bond between mother and daughter deepened in these months, built on shared struggle and mutual care. Marianne also began cautiously dating, encouraged by Karen, who insisted she deserved companionship, yet every attempt was tinged with doubt and fear. How could she open herself to another human being after the betrayal she had endured? Among these attempts, she met Jacob, a kind-hearted therapist in their neighborhood who seemed genuinely interested in her life and listened without judgment. Their initial coffee dates were tentative, filled with nervous laughter and small talk, but gradually Marianne found herself feeling alive again, the tightness in her chest loosening even if just a little. Yet, life refused to give her peace without testing her resilience further. A scammer posing as a debt relief counselor contacted her, claiming they could eliminate her remaining credit card debt for a small upfront fee. Marianne, cautious but desperate, almost fell for it, before Miguel's warning and her own growing skepticism saved her from sending a single cent. The experience left her shaken, a reminder that vulnerability can attract predators, and that even as she rebuilt, the world could still try to exploit her. On the bright side, she discovered new ways to survive and thrive, taking night classes to improve her bookkeeping skills and gradually building a freelance client base. Emily's college journey, too, became a shared project. Marianne helped her with scholarships, budget planning, and emotional support, finding joy in watching her daughter navigate life's complexities with courage. Holidays arrived, bringing their own mix of sadness and hope. Marianne and Emily decorated the house modestly, their small tree a symbol of endurance and resilience. On Christmas Eve, after a day filled with laughter and homemade cookies, Marianne found herself on the couch, holding Emily close, finally allowing herself to feel a sense of accomplishment and love that wasn't tainted by loss. In those quiet moments, she realized that life's worth was measured not in perfection or security, but in the depth of connection, the courage to face pain, and the ability to find light even in darkness. She was still wounded, scarred by betrayal and hardship, yet she was beginning to understand that survival itself could be beautiful, messy, uncertain, but undeniably hers. The long nights of fear and anxiety slowly became interspersed with small moments of peace, proof that even a heart battered by deception could beat steadily, resiliently, and with hope. Spring arrived with its usual stubborn insistence on renewal, though Marianne's wounds were far from fully healed. She had taken on a part-time role managing accounts for a small non-profit organization, and while it didn't pay much, it offered stability and a sense of purpose that had been missing for years. Her confidence began to grow as she juggled multiple responsibilities: her work, freelance bookkeeping, Emily's college demands, and the ongoing battle against lingering debts. It was a delicate balance, sometimes tipping precariously, but Marianne had become adept at navigating the complexities of life, learning to prioritize, delegate, and, when necessary, say no. Meanwhile, her relationship with Jacob had deepened, not into the whirlwind of romance she had once fantasized about, but into something steadier, safer, and more genuine, built on empathy, shared understanding, and trust. Jacob's presence reminded her that she could still be cared for, and that love did not have to be synonymous with betrayal or pain. Yet the scars of her past were never far away. The revelation of Tom's long-term infidelity still haunted her, and occasional encounters with him, whether through legal matters or shared acquaintances, stirred anger and grief that threatened to overwhelm her carefully reconstructed life. Marianne also faced bureaucratic nightmares, from medical bills left unpaid due to Tom's neglect to surprise tax notices that forced her to scramble for records and receipts. At one particularly low point, she nearly broke down in the office restroom, tears burning her eyes, hands trembling as she realized the magnitude of the uphill battle she faced. But through these moments, her support network, Karen, Miguel, and even a few colleagues who had observed her diligence and resilience, became lifelines, reminders that she was not alone in her struggles. Emily's growth continued to be a source of pride and motivation. Watching her daughter thrive, navigating college with determination and grace, gave Marianne renewed purpose. Together, they developed routines that brought stability: weekly budgeting meetings, Sunday dinners with friends who had become surrogate family, and quiet evenings devoted to reading, journaling, or simply being present with one another. Despite occasional relapses into anxiety or despair, Marianne had discovered the power of structure, community, and hope. There were still moments when the weight of loss and betrayal threatened to crush her, but these moments were shorter, less frequent, and countered by tangible reminders of her strength. On the rare days when she allowed herself to dream, Marianne imagined a future free from the shadows of deceit, where she could build a home, both physically and emotionally, rooted in honesty, trust, and love. These dreams, once almost impossible, now felt achievable, tentative yet real, and Marianne cherished each one as a beacon guiding her through the fog of the past. By summer, Marianne's life had settled into a rhythm that felt fragile yet sustaining. She had secured a more permanent position at the nonprofit, her work valued and her expertise recognized, allowing her to breathe a little easier about bills and looming debts. Yet the emotional scars were persistent. She often woke in the middle of the night with a sudden jolt of panic, heart racing as memories of Tom's betrayal and the financial devastation he left behind replayed in her mind. There were days when the anxiety was so overwhelming she could barely function, forcing her to step outside, walk the streets near her home, and breathe deeply, reminding herself that she had survived every storm thus far. Emily had grown more independent, balancing summer classes and a part-time job, but she never failed to check in on Marianne, sending texts filled with love, reminders to eat, and sometimes just funny memes to make her mother smile. In the quiet of these summer evenings, Marianne found herself reflecting on her journey, the months of tears, the sleepless nights, the scams she had narrowly avoided, and the friendships that had become lifelines. She remembered the predatory loan that had promised to save her, the slick-talking con artist who nearly convinced her to hand over thousands, and the frustration of discovering yet another financial setback caused by Tom's secret dealings. Each encounter had left her wary, but also wiser, instilling in her a cautious vigilance she had never needed before. And yet, life was not just about survival. moments of pure joy began to appear, like the days she and Emily spent at the lake with Karen and her 2 children, laughing until their sides hurt, the sun warm on their faces, the water sparkling with possibility. Jacob, too, became more than a quiet presence. He was a steady hand, offering support when Marianne doubted herself, listening when the pain threatened to overwhelm her, and sharing small acts of kindness that restored her faith in human connection. As summer deepened, Marianne even began to consider long-abandoned dreams, traveling with Emily, taking a class in creative writing, perhaps volunteering in ways that mattered to her soul rather than just her wallet. It was not naive optimism, it was a cautious, deliberate reclaiming of life after years of betrayal and hardship. The community around her had transformed from a peripheral support into a lifeline. Miguel helped her navigate the intricacies of freelance clients, teaching her to invoice correctly, manage contracts, and assert boundaries with people who tried to take advantage of her. Karen's friendship became almost maternal, her unflinching presence a constant reassurance that Marianne did not have to carry every burden alone. Even small gestures, a cup of coffee waiting at a cafe, an encouraging text, a shared meal, became reminders that life was not just about loss. Marianne started volunteering at a local women's shelter once a week, guiding women through the same financial pitfalls she had encountered, teaching them to identify scams, create budgets, and regain control of their lives. In those moments, Marianne felt a profound sense of purpose, a feeling that even her pain could be transformed into something meaningful. It did not erase the grief of her failed marriage, nor did it absolve her of the anxiety that still lingered, but it provided her with a sense of agency, proof that she could make a difference despite the hardships life had forced upon her. And when Emily came home in the evenings, tired from classes but smiling, Marianne felt the weight of love that carried her through even the darkest nights, a reminder that despite everything, life had the capacity for joy, renewal, and hope. Autumn brought a quiet transformation that Marianne hadn't anticipated. Emily was approaching the end of her college semester, more confident, independent, and resilient than Marianne had ever imagined, and the thought of sending her daughter off into the world evoked both pride and a twinge of melancholy. Marianne had finally begun to see the contours of a life reconstructed on her terms. She was financially steadier, emotionally wiser, and socially connected in ways that had seemed impossible in the immediate aftermath of her collapse. Yet the shadow of Tom lingered in unexpected ways. Encounters with him during legal proceedings or accidental meetings at grocery stores dredged up old wounds, sparking anger, sadness, and at times, disbelief that a person could be so deceptive for so long. But Marianne had learned to navigate these encounters with a controlled grace, the anger no longer a consuming flame but a measured response, a shield that protected her newfound stability. Jacob continued to grow in importance, not as a rescue from her pain, but as a partner in rebuilding, someone who respected her independence and quietly encouraged her growth. Their weekends became filled with simple pleasures, walks along tree-lined streets, dinners shared with friends who had become like family, and quiet evenings discussing books, dreams, and the small victories that often went unnoticed but were significant nonetheless. Marianne also invested more energy into her freelance work, slowly building a reputation that brought in higher-paying clients, giving her a measure of financial autonomy she had not known for years. She became more assertive in her dealings, refusing scams and manipulations, and teaching Emily to approach her own life with caution and discernment. In many ways, Marianne discovered that the process of rebuilding was not linear. There were days of doubt, tears, and frustration, counterbalanced by moments of triumph, laughter, and deep connection. A particularly moving experience came when Marianne and Emily attended a local community event focused on financial literacy. Watching women from different walks of life share stories of survival and resilience reminded Marianne that she was not alone in her struggles. In those moments, hope and sorrow coexisted, creating a complex, layered understanding of life's realities. Marianne realized that peace was not about erasing pain, but about learning to live with it, acknowledging the scars, and transforming them into sources of strength and empathy. She and Emily began planning a small trip together, a reward for enduring years of uncertainty and fear, and the excitement of travel, planning routes, packing bags, discussing new experiences, rekindled Marianne's sense of adventure and possibility. As the leaves turned fiery shades of red and gold, she reflected on her journey with gratitude, for the pain that had revealed her strength, for the friends who had become family, for the small but meaningful victories that now punctuated her days. Marianne understood that life would always carry challenges, that financial and emotional trials might resurface, but she had learned to approach them with courage, resilience, and the support of those she trusted. The chapter of Tom's betrayal was no longer a consuming narrative but a part of a larger story of survival, growth, and rediscovered joy. And in the quiet moments, when she sat with Emily or held Jacob's hand, she felt a profound sense of completeness, not perfection, but peace born from enduring life's storms and choosing to continue, regardless of the scars. Winter returned, bringing with it a quiet serenity that felt reflective, almost like the world itself was pausing to allow Marianne to take stock of how far she had come. Her home, once a symbol of despair, had transformed into a sanctuary, filled with warmth, laughter, and the aroma of Emily's experimental baking, evidence of resilience and creativity thriving amidst past pain. Marianne had fully embraced the routines and relationships that had supported her rebirth: her work, freelance clients, community involvement, and the genuine companionship of Jacob, who never sought to erase her past but walked beside her in the present. She had paid off several debts entirely, negotiated manageable terms on the remaining balances, and built a small savings account, a tangible sign of the autonomy she had fought for. Her relationship with Emily had deepened beyond the ordinary parent-child bond, evolving into a partnership rooted in trust, mutual support, and shared experiences that had both survived and thrived amidst adversity. The pain of Tom's betrayal had softened, no longer an acute ache but a distant echo, a lesson etched into her consciousness about vigilance, resilience, and self-worth. Marianne had learned to recognize the subtle ways life could still disappoint, but also to cherish the countless ways it could uplift, in a friend's encouragement, a stranger's kindness, or the simple joy of a quiet morning cup of tea. One crisp evening, as snow began to fall gently outside their window, Marianne sat with Emily and Jacob, the three of them sharing stories, laughter, and a quiet acknowledgement of the battles each had fought. There were tears, yes, for what had been lost, for the pain endured, but they were accompanied by a profound sense of gratitude and closure. Marianne understood that life would always present challenges, that moments of financial strain, betrayal, or heartbreak might recur, but she now possessed the tools, relationships, and inner strength to face them without losing herself. In that serene, softly lit room, with Emily leaning against her shoulder and Jacob's hand resting reassuringly over hers, Marianne felt a complete, unshakable peace, the kind that comes not from perfection, but from embracing imperfection with courage, love, and the knowledge that one had survived the worst and still chosen to live fully. She knew the scars would remain, the memory of betrayal would linger, but she no longer feared it. It had shaped her, refined her, and ultimately allowed her to claim a life built on authenticity, resilience, and enduring hope. For Marianne Parker, the journey had been long, painful, and fraught with loss, but it had also been rich with lessons, connection, and the rediscovery of joy, proving that even amidst heartbreak, financial turmoil, and deception, the human spirit could find its way back to light, peace, and the quiet comfort of a life reclaimed. For more gripping tales like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.